Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming, and welcome to patch 1.1.1. It's finally here and it features a lot of changes for Sorcerer in particular, but there's more than just that to this patch. All the classes had some good changes and some buffs, including Necromancer, but what are the main ones for us? Well, Aspect of Torment was massively buffed to increase essence regen from 20 to 30% to now 90 to 170%. That is ridiculous. Aspect of Torment combined with Exposed Flesh results in a lot of essence generation even before this crazy buff. Now combined with the newly buffed version, it should lead to hilarious ultra essence generation gameplay, perfect actually for Bone Spear. Then there's the aspect of Exposed Flesh itself, which used to only work based on bone attacks, but now it's any damage dealt to a currently vulnerable enemy, meaning the best resource aspect unique to Necromancer is more universal, which is great. Further, I am very happy to say that the imperfectly balanced bug is finally gone from the game. They finally fixed it. We're talking about one of our most important passives for Necromancer as a whole, let alone Bone Spear, and you could only put 1 point into it. Now you can actually put more points into it, and it's working correctly. Woohoo. Then for other builds, the Wither board is decently improved when it comes to Paragon boards, and minions have a slightly better survivability due to certain AoEs dealing a lot less damage to them. So overall, we find that Bone Spear benefits the most from this patch amazingly. Because yeah, imperfectly balanced is working, and that makes a huge difference, and with that in mind, the huge essence generation potential of Torment and Exposed aspects combined really works. Today then, I've been testing an updated Bone Spear build that features the newly improved crazy high essence generation of Torment, and combine that with the extra essence drain of imperfectly balanced levels, like even more on your amulet, you can get some real damage increase for that. But the question is it worth running? Or maybe should you run a lower essence demanding build and find another way to increase your damage? I'll cover everything that the build uses and wants, and come to that conclusion and talk about it all. We'll begin with the skill tree, and I'll just scroll down so you can pause and look where I've spent my points if you want to do that at any point. But from the top, we have our basic Bone Splinters, enhancing it and going for Acolytes. This improves our crit chance, again, super vital for this build. Then we have Bone Spear, 5 out of 5. We're going to enhance that and go for Paranormal, because we don't need to generate vulnerability thanks to our main aspect. And then this gives us more crit chance via the Bone Spear. 3 out of 3 on Unliving Energy increases our max essence, important for our key passive. And yeah, it's finally back, imperfectly balanced at 3 out of 3. Making core skills like Bone Spear cost more essence to use, but deal way more damage. And as you can see, with that extra ranks, it becomes even more expensive, but deals double that damage. While we're here, we're definitely going to want 3 out of 3 on Hued Flesh to generate more corpses to use. 1 point into Corpse Explosion, purely to pop Corpse Explosions using the Sacrilegious Heart. We don't care about the damage at all, but we do care about the fact that it gives us a tiny bit of essence with 1 level in Grim Harvest, and at 3 out of 3, Fueled by Death, it's going to give us a pretty consistent damage increase. On the next tree, we have, as always, Death's Embrace, reducing close damage and improving ours. Decrepify, 1 out of 5. Enhanced, and then of course Abhorrent for the chance to reset cooldowns and maybe stun. It is cursing enemies, so increasing our damage to them, so we go for amplified damage. On the next tree, we have 1 point into Corpse Tendrils, because we're resetting the cooldown and using Sacrilegious anyway, so it doesn't matter about the cooldown of this too much. Enhancing it, and going for Played Corpse Tendrils to generate vulnerability again as another method. The all-important Bone passives, a 3 out of 3 Serration, Compound Fracture, and Evulsion are standard. Out of those 3, Evulsion is the most valuable, but I'm also going 3 out of 3 on Rapid Ossification in this build because I do want to generate more Bone Storm for the damage reduction and the shield that it will provide from an aspect. An alternative to that would be 3 out of 3 on Inspiring Leader for more attack speed, which is nice too. Of course, on the ultimate tree, we're taking Bone Storm, upgrading it for the damage reduction and the crit strike chance increase. We're sacrificing all our minions, so Standalone will reduce damage, Memento Mori will improve the sacrifice benefits. Then for our key passive, of course, it's Ossified Essence. The more essence you have as you cast your Bone Spear, the more damage it does. For the sacrifices, it is standard fare. You go for the Skirmishers for the crit strike chance improvement. We go for Mages on maximum essence to further improve our damage from having higher essence at the time, but a perfectly reasonable alternative is of course the Cold Mages for the vulnerable damage increase. The Golem, as always, is Iron Sacrifice for the crit strike damage improvement. Moving on to the Paragon, here are my current 4 boards, although ideally I want 5, and at the end I will explain exactly what I'm talking about there. To begin with though, we have our starter board. We come from the bottom around to the right to Prime, making our way up to Sacrificial. Sacrificial requires 40 intelligence to activate, and even when it's not level 15, it's easy to get active on the first board through this method, and this is going to give us 10% times increased damage when we have no minions, so a permanent big damage increase is very strong in a build like this. This is how I spend my points to make sure sure I get that intelligence going, making sure to get both rare nodes and leaving on the left. Moving up to the next board, it's standard fare here. As always, Bone Graft rotated to get to this legendary node as soon as possible for its max essence and also damage increase benefits. From the bottom, we work our way up and to the right, picking up Entomb on the way, making sure to come up and pick up the magic node for more crit strike damage with bone skills, but then coming down to Bone Graft itself. Then we work our way up and to the left to pick up Reinvigorate, all the magic nodes around that to further improve our max essence and generate more essence on kill. Then we work our way up to Calcified for further crit strike damage with bone skill, and again the magic nodes around it, which are awesome. And then we come up and around to finally pick up the Glyph Socket, which is of course Exploit, increasing your vulnerable damage. And the secondary effect, dealing damage to vulnerable enemies, scales your damage up to 10% times. Also, while you're here, you want to make sure you come up to Shaper of Bone for the big perk of that, and pick up the magic nodes around it, not only for the extra dex that it provides, but the bone skill damage these magic nodes give. On the way down then, we make our way to our next board, the third one, which is Flesh Eater. Because we're using Sacrilegious and Corpse Explosion, we're consuming corpses often, so this means we regularly get that 40% times increased damage, which is awesome. We'll rotate the board so Flesh Eater's close by, and come down to Stifle, improving our damage to injured enemies, but also the crit strike damage bonus. The magic nodes around that are also amazing. While we're on the way to the glyph, we'll come up and go get the Flesh Eater, then come to the left and make our way up to the glyph socket itself, where we have Control. Another 40 intelligence required to activate that, but again, there's a lot of intelligence around here, even more than I have currently, that I will come back for. Making sure to get Control active then, we're going to majorly improve our damage to crowd control enemies, and 10% times to slowed or chilled, 20% times to stunned or frozen. As always, a major damage increaser. From there, we'll work our way down to the next board. This board is what you should expect, Scent of Death for the damage reduction it provides. We'll rotate the board to get to the glyph first, so we'll come left and around, making our way down and around to the glyph, which is Essence. Essence provides a major benefit to crit strike damage, the more dexterity you pick up, and its secondary effect means your crit strikes deal 22% increased damage to any enemy that's not healthy. A big damage spike if a fight is lasting more than a second, which doesn't happen often, but when you're dealing with elites or bosses, it does help there. And make sure to pick up Deathmark and also Preservation while we're here, and then we come straight down to pick up Scent of Death. At this point, because I'm level 83, I don't have my remaining 17 levels of points, so let me explain what will be next. What I will do with my next points then is from Scent of Death, come to the left and down and left to pick up Ruin, the rare node. The magic nodes around it are also incredible, so I'll pick up all of them. Then with my next points, I will come down to the next board gate here at the bottom of the Scent of Death board, where I will pick up a board that is easy to get straight to a glyph. Bloodbath is a great version of that and is usually the one that I'll use, and we'll just rotate that so that we can get to the glyph really quickly, making our way down to the right to pick up the glyph. Depending on what I want, I'll put in a glyph that will be helpful to damage reduction or further my damage generally. For the damage reduction, I'd go for Territorial. For the damage increase, I'd go for Gravekeeper. Chances are you'll want Territorial though. With your remaining points after that, you want to pick up things we've been ignoring for efficiency, such as going and picking up magic nodes that increase your life, further enhance your glyphs, like picking up more dexterity around this one. On the Bone Graft board, coming right and up to finally pick up Tenacity and all of the magic nodes around it for their better defensive perks, and even working your way up to something like the Color node for the attack speed magic nodes around it. And that should fulfill all of your 100 point levels. Now we move on to the gear section. I'll begin with the hearts as always. Firstly, our wrathful heart of choice is obviously Barber, which is undeniably the best wrathful heart in the game still. It remains pretty broken despite our expectations that it would be nerfed, so it seems like they're keeping it in this state for a while, meaning most every build is still going to run it, especially when you consider that Barber has been changed and quote-unquote fixed in many ways in an undocumented way from patch 1.1.1, meaning in our case it actually works with Shielding Storm and it works with the exploit glyph. Across the board, things that should have interacted with Barber now are, so it's even better than it used to be. Then we have two Vicious Hearts as just before. Tempting Fate is going to improve your crit damage. Once you have high enough crit chance, this is incredible, but it's also true that these days we have a lot higher base crit damage, so a multiplier would be a lot better, and this is additive, but it still has a big impact. However, if you feel you'd rather have a defensive heart here, that wouldn't be terrible. You could go for the Brutal Decrepit Aura perk to permanently have Decrepify going, which would then free up a slot where you could put something like Blood Mist for extra survivability. The other heart, though, isn't going anywhere. The Sacrilegious heart, this is what's auto-triggering Corpse Tendrils, Corpse Explosions, without any effort. The Corpse Explosions being triggered in this way means we're getting the buff from Paragon, meaning Flesh Eater, or your skill tree in Fuel by Death. Now let's look at the gear specifically. What you'll see is I have my unique helm in my inventory and a different helm actually equipped. This is because it's a choice. Deathless Visage as your helmet is going to be the best DPS option. It's obviously incredible, improving your Bone Spear damage. As we push higher tiers, you're going to want more survivability, and so it's going to be too important to not give that up. So on my helm that I'm running as I push higher tiers, it's Shielding Storm, providing a barrier while we have Bone Storm going, which is often. It's up to you if you're speed clearing or pushing higher tiers, and whether you want to go offensive or defensive between these two picks. On the chest piece, I would run Might. We're using our basic attack quite a lot to generate crit chance and essence, so making it so as we do that, we get 6 seconds of 20% damage reduction. It's obviously amazing. On the gloves, it's Serration still, working in tie with our key passive, improving the damage that we deal the higher essence we have at the time of casting Bone Spear. On the legs, it's still Disobedience, it's still a top tier defensive aspect, and on the boots, it's still Penitent Greaves, because this is the rare way we can increase our damage on a boot slot, improving our damage to shield enemies, but also it shields enemies for us, which means we're getting bonus damage from our Paragon with the Control glyph. We're still using a two-hand sword with the Splintering aspect, which means we get vulnerability by just throwing Bone Spears, and it improves the damage of that. On our amulet, as always, we have Grasping Veins for the massive crit strike chance that it gives us, and the massive damage increase to those affected by Corpse Tendrils. On our rings, as we've talked about, we have Exposed Flesh to generate essence when hitting vulnerable enemies with Lucky Hit, and then of course the newly buffed Torment aspect, giving us up to 170% times improved energy regen after we crit with a bone skill, which is always. Unfortunately, I literally don't have a roll of this, so I had to put it on via the codex, but you could have an even stronger version of this, therefore have faster essence regen than in the footage I've used today. The alternative aspect I would recommend is Sacrificial. Your sacrifice bonuses will be increased, improving your crit strike damage, which is obviously really good. If you don't want to run the amulet that has imperfectly balanced levels on it, meaning your essence cost is higher. But we'll talk about this properly at the end. When it comes to the affixes, it's pretty standard stuff. On the gloves, you're going to want levels of Bone Spear +4, and on the amulet, this is where you'd either have Evulsion or, in my case, Imperfectly Balanced. This was for the test to see if 6 levels of Imperfectly Balanced would actually be viable with the insane amount of essence regen we get from Exposed Flesh combined with the newly buffed Torment. I found it incredible, but again, if this is too much on your essence drain, then I would recommend Evulsion levels on your amulet. For the rest of the pieces though, you're going to be looking for crit chance on everything. You need as close to 100% crit chance at all times. So crit strike chance on every piece that can have it is the most important thing. Second to that, you'll be looking for maximum essence, because the higher essence you have, the more damage you'll deal. After that, again, standard stuff, improve your crit strike damage and your vulnerable damage, your bone crit and crit damage. And then after that, you're looking for Lucky Hit or any other damage modifiers that exist. On your legs and chest, as always, you want 4 defensives if you can get them. So damage reduction, armor, and health are amazing. And then close and far damage reductions. These are also good, but not as good. And before I forget, the gems are the damage reduction while control impaired on the armor, or you could run rubies for the health increase they provide. Why I go for the damage reduction while control impaired is because we're not running Blood Mist. So if I get stunned, I don't want to die, and this majorly reduces the damage you take while stunned. Then on the weapon, as always, it's the improvement to crit strike damage to vulnerable enemies, which is pretty meta for most builds. So, in conclusion, is this the best Bone Spear version? I think it's undeniably very strong, and with the massive essence generation, it's become quite smooth, this very high levels of Imperfectly Balanced. If I had the actual full roll of Torment to get the crazy 170% times increase compared to my Codex 90%, it would only be better. So I think it's going to be very good with that in mind. If you don't have a high roll of Torment and want something smoother with that, I'd suggest the Sacrifice aspect instead, while running the Evulsion levels on your amulet rather than Imperfectly balanced like me. Ultimately, it's always up to you what your gear is going to be and why you're running it particularly. If you're pushing high tier nightmare dungeons, a more defensive focus is going to be better. Our output is so good with or without the unique helm, whether you worked in territorial sooner for a DPS loss, but yeah, damage reduction. In that case, potentially swap out the essence glyph in that example. What's nice about running this current state of Bone Spear though, is how we can adapt it to our needs. It's not only the strongest Necromancer build, but it's also one of the more adaptable builds, which is funny. If you wanted, you could run a one-hander and a focus offhand to squeeze in an extra aspect as an idea. But whatever way you go, I hope this video and the information within it has been helpful to you. We'll be looking at future Necromancer builds from here and how they're doing in Season 1 shortly, such as full summon a Necromancer, or the unique shield for crazy bone storms and more. Until next time though, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.